Welcome to the Shore Medical Center overview of the use of the provider workflow tool for patient documentation. This view is often referred to as the mPage. On opening a patient chart, the initial view you are presented with is the provider workflow. There are several tabs which define different workflows for different scenarios of patient care. To begin this demonstration, we will review an admission H&P being done through the workflow view. As you can see, the various stages of information needed to formulate a final history and physical are presented. The order of these steps are customizable for individual physician preference. For example, if I'd like to move the patient history to the top, I can do so simply by dragging. I can also move allergies down farther if I'd like to. Many of the work views that you are traditionally used to accessing through the menu can also be accessed through hyperlinks. For example, to enter this patient's home medications, we can click on the Home Med tab. It will bring us to the traditional medication list workflow. You can then return to the mPage by clicking your back button. There's a section for order entry. You can search for admission orders and others as you normally would, including power plans. If we select the power plan, it goes into our order cart. Once we open our order cart, we're able to modify the details, which will bring you to a familiar screen for entering and editing. Once those are prepared, you can initiate now, enter any missing diagnoses or orders. If you're prompted to do any other tasks, that will be available to you in this menu. As this patient does not have allergies reconciled yet, we are able to either enter an allergy or simply document that the patient does not have any known medication allergies. Additionally, as we scroll through the workflow, you would note ER provider documentation or any prior records that are within the filters. The problem list is perhaps one of the most important elements of the provider workflow. In our scenario, this patient is presenting with chest pain, so we will search for chest pain. It will now add it to a problem. Problems automatically searched will be prioritized. The patient also has hypertension. As you can see, as we add problems to the list, they are organized by activity and by severity. In our clinical scenario, we assume the patient has been already seen by the ER doctor and has been found to have an elevated troponin consistent with an NSTEMI. Therefore, we can search for acute MI. As you'll note, the patient's priority now has changed. The active problem number 1 is the acute MI, with the chest pain simply being a symptom. As acute MI is not a specified diagnosis, we are able to open the diagnostic assistant tool where we can better drill down the type of infarction the patient's having. For this case, we can select a non-ST elevated. There are also other temporal and laterality selections that can be made. Patient diagnoses should be selected as the most specific as possible to help with coding and billing. It's recommended that when you're first documenting, you select the subjective, review of systems, objective, and assessment and plan fields. There is a pop-out tab on the side of each, which will permanently select a preference to allow these tabs to be separated from the workflow in order to better document the patient. Now that we have popped out our tabs, we're able to document information as we review it in the chart. As this is a test patient, there is no clinical data available for review. However, you can see that my fields are available now, so I can use dragging dictation to dictate the patient's history. 50-year-old female presented with substernal chest pain radiating to the left shoulder. Chest pain is noted above, also some sweats, fatigue, and tachycardia/palpitations. You're able to use any quick tests or drag-in phrases you have saved. For example, I will pull up my physical exam templates. Can insert that immediately into the note. As you will note, the assessment and plan has been pre-filled based upon my problem list. If I wish to reorder any of these, I can do so by changing their priority, and as you will note, the boxes will automatically appear. There are extra text boxes to add formatting for style. For example, I'll insert a one-liner. A 50-year-old female with a history of hypertension presenting with acute chest pain consistent with NSTEMI. Consult cardiology, begin heparin. Monitor closely, continue home medications. As the chest pain is now truly a symptom, I don't need to document it as a separate problem. I can either remove it from the note here, or I can simply unselect it as a prioritized diagnosis and it will disappear. By saving all of these categories, they will now auto-populate in my note when I generate it. You can select the appropriate template, and as you will note, at this point, the entire note is essentially completed for you. Any labs, diagnostic results would appear as they normally do, in addition to any histories that were entered into the patient's chart. At this point, you can simply edit your note and sign and submit. It's important to note, if you are using the Clinical AI Assistant Virtual Scribe app on your phone during your patient encounter, after you submit the note for generation within the app, the specific AI-generated components will appear within these fields. Therefore, you will not have to generate them from scratch. You will simply need to just edit them for accuracy. Now let's assume we're returning the following day to round on this patient. We would then use the progress note workflow. It will pull in any other physician documentation and changes in the patient condition as listed. Again, the first time you're using any of these interfaces, it's recommended to pull out the tabs to the side to create a 3-tab view where you can very easily compose and edit your note. As you will note, information here is retained because I did not save the prior note. Once a note is saved and generated, these fields will reset. However, the problems will remain day to day, so there is no longer a need to remember the order and importance of patient problems from day to day. They simply can be updated. Cardiology recommending transfer for PCI. Has been well controlled on current regimen, continue. Again, as we save and generate these notes, we can then create our progress note and it will pull over the existing information. When entering your bill for the day, it's possible to select the New Order Entry tab. If you have it saved as a favorite, you can click on Mine, and then you can access the super bill. When the super bill is added to your order cart, you can click on that, and when you go to modify your details, as you normally would, select your level of billing, you'll notice that the patient's priorities are automatically inserted into the order that you saved them previously, reducing duplicative work. It is important on a day-to-day basis and when encountering new patients to maintain the patient's problem list, as again, this is the most important part of the physician workflow page. Problems that are no longer active can be marked and therefore they will be removed. We can also select problems as chronic so that they are retained on the patient's chart for future visits. If a chronic problem does resolve, you can simply click the Resolve button and it will remove the chronic indicator. After finishing documentation for any encounter, it is important to update the physician handoff worklist. This is the universal electronic sign-out system that the hospitalist group uses. We will be able to find the patient's primary contact, which is the attending hospitalist, any pending actions that need to be done for this patient, in addition to pending diagnoses, and also the acuity and any sign-out comments. Patient being transferred for PCI. It's important to update these so the group has a running log of the patient's hospital stay, and this will aid in discharge documentation preparation. Thank you for watching this tutorial on the updated use of the provider workflow, including the problem list management. If you have any questions, please reach out to the team.